my computer don't fail me this time around. Gentlemen, I didn't really lie.
Murphy.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the All the Reps and Beyond podcast. This is our third episode. We're very happy to be here today. Very excited about today's episode. We have with us three amazing gentlemen. This is like the finest, the cream de la crop of Liberia. I have with me, of course. I have with me, of course, Dr. Pittman Kennedy, my wonderful co-host. And I also have two special, very intelligent, brilliant young men. Mr. Leo. Now, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right. Leo Likpele Nopolu Johnson.
There you go. You got it right.
I mean, I need a tell name. My name is a tell name.
I was about to say you are Numeni.
Yeah, Numeni. Yeah. So my name is a tell name too. And of course, I have the wonderful, very energetic and amazing Cici Goya. Ladies and gentlemen, today
the border chief.
Now I'm gonna give each of you the chance, of course, to reintroduce yourself. I know you have a lot to share with the people as far as your personal journey. But before we get to that, let me just say, ladies and gentlemen, today on the third episode of All the Reps and Beyond, and of course, on All the Reps and Beyond, we believe that good repetition, good habits, breed success. So that's our motto. That's one of the most important pieces of our journey here. And today, like I said, today we will be talking. Today is the introduction of a 3-part series. So we will be this 3-part series. We're going to cover education and culture in pre and post-conflict Liberia. So we're over the next 2-3 weeks, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about education in Liberia. How did it begin? How did it? Who were the players? Did we craft the right pieces? Do we have basically? Did we put in place the right mechanisms to help our country grow, or to set our country on the right path? With that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Dr. Pittman Kennedy. Pittman, you can go ahead and reintroduce yourself to the wonderful people, and then we'll go to Leo and then Cici, and then we can dive right into our topic.
So I always want to say thanks to God first for being here, and then thanks to you guys for the opportunity to share your time and your knowledge and your mindset with us. But again, Pittman Kennedy, I live down in San Antonio, Texas. I'm retired Air Force, 21 years. Currently work for the Air Force in an area of innovation and things like I do innovation for the Air Force. I'm the Chief Innovation Manager for the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center. I also lecture at Carolina University School, John Lewis School of Leadership. So I'll leave it right there. I run the Sweat Equity I think that's important. So equity, athletic, and leadership development, which is focused on developing young people, giving them a means to some type of end. And my mantra for Liberia is to give hope to every Liberian child, which encompasses and includes education. I'm excited to be here with these two fine young men today because, man, we are going to be amazed. I hope you're ready. Everybody, the listening audience, get your notepad and some writing instrument because it's going to be necessary. Thank you.
Yes, we'll go on to you, Leo. You can just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yep. No, thank you. Thank you, Nomini and Dr. Pittman Kennedy. Good to see you again, and good to see Cici as well from the border between Lofa and Nimba. But that's a different story. It's good to be here. My name is Leo Nupolu Johnson. I live in Canada, but I'm very frequent between Liberia, Ghana, and Canada, back and forth. And it's an honor to be here today. I from Liberia, live in Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and then now in Canada. My background academically, I studied economics and political science, but then I went into nonprofit startups and management. It's amazing how people don't see the intersection between what you do there and what you do on the other side. But started an organization when I was 1 year in Canada called Empowerment Squared. And I've since grown it to a 35 strong staff organization, 2 locations in Canada. We do work in Liberia, in Ghana, and South Africa now. And I'm a part of a consultancy called Wentworth Strategy Group that I started with a bunch of my colleagues started, and I joined in Canada here. So we do everything your Deloitte will do for you, but for small, medium to small size businesses in between there. A full house, everything from financial analysis, strategic planning, business analysis, and all of it. And then I sit on a lot of different boards as well, just offering my services in that way. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Amazing. Thank you, my brother. CZ, what's going on at the Nima and Lofa border, my brother?
The Nima Lofa border is secure. It's open. Curfew has been lifted. The boning boxes, we saw people in, we send it back. Well, no, on a serious note, today I temporarily gave power over, so I can't talk about the border right now. We'll talk about what we're here for. A lot of folks might not know me, but it's nice being on here with these 2 scholars, Dr. Pittman and Leo, and of course my own brother Numeni. We go back and forth a long way. Well, I am Sisi Goya. My name actually is Gidwoba Sisi Goya, raw Roma man from Roa Rufa. I have been in the US for quite a while now, but currently, after 15 years of teaching high school mathematics here in the state of Minnesota, I am the first director of mathematics in Minneapolis Public Schools, and now, after 2 years of serving in that role, I got given a bigger seat. Now I'm the director of mathematics and sciences and STEM, which oversees all math K-12 in all 80+ schools, including hospitals and juvie detention sites. And I also see all sciences, K-12, so we're talking earth science, space science, chemistry, physics, biology. I also see all physical health, physical education, and health courses. So what that means is I craft the vision for the district. I help in curriculum selection. I help with developing teachers' pedagogy and developing principles and kind of developing leaders on how to lead our kids. Before that, I was blessed to have served as one of 3 co-chairs on the state of Minnesota's math standards committee. So we wrote the math standards for the state of Minnesota. So your kids in Minnesota, K through 12, for the next 15 years, whatever math they learn, was determined by the table that I sat on as a co-chair. Before then, I was one of 2 people that wrote the new SAT math for College Board. Before then, I also worked with College Board in writing the AccuPlacer, so the college entrance math exams that folks take to go to universities. I am very proud to be a board member of the Organization of Librarians in Minnesota, the Organization of Librarians in Minnesota.
OLM.
The OLM.
Nice. Thank you, gentlemen. Once again, it is an honor and a pleasure to have all of you here. Today, we just want to take a chance, take a moment to look back at our dear country, Liberia, from an educational and cultural standpoint. We all here understand what that country means to us. I love Liberia very, very dearly, and I think that's one of the reasons why we're always talking about ways and means to make our country better. We will keep talking, and not only will we keep talking, but we will try our best to follow up and do some of the things that are necessary to push our country forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I want to reintroduce you to today's topic. This is a 3-part series, so we will be talking about when I mean from a 3-part series, so that'll be part 1, part 2, and part 3. So today is part 1, and The general topic is education and culture in post-conflict Liberia. Now, part one, we're going to talk about the roots of Liberia's pre-conflict educational system. Again, the roots of Liberia's pre-conflict education system. Part two, which should be next week, we're going to talk about the lost generation. So that's education during the civil crisis. So that would be from 1990 till 1997, I guess. So we'll talk about that. And then part three, we're going to talk about post-conflict rebuilding culture, policy, and the way forward. Of the three, I think part three is going to be the best. I think after all the talking and considerations and analysis that we do in part one and two, I think part three is just going to be the icing on the cake. So with that, gentlemen, I want to kick the conversation off, and I'm going to kick it off with you, Leo. What is Liberia's educational philosophy? That is where I want us to start, gentlemen.
Thank you. That's a very good question, and I would take it from a very contextual point, in my opinion. The Liberian education system itself was never designed to educate the broad spectrum of its population from the very genesis. It was actually designed to protect power of the elite to be able to position themselves as they were originally. We know that. And when I'm talking about the education system, I'm talking about a Western style official academic educational system, because we forget that there were educational systems in place long before that it became the dominant, because as a society where we transitioned to, and other forms were suppressed. But the philosophy was meant to protect an elite culture of a society. That was the philosophy. And for a very long time also, it was meant to be the dominant, to dominate every other, so that only those who were able to participate in that could then be in power, in all sectors, not just political power. So when I use the term power. And what that came from, we know where it came from the Western colonial system, which is the same thing here, they did here pretty much. That's why you got low-income schools in certain communities. You see the kind of outputs that come from there versus high-income schools in certain communities, and you see the kind of output that come from there, and people fight which schools they have to go to. And we're still having this big debate in the West of how certain schools are underfunded versus schools that are well-funded. So we borrow that from here directly and try to recreate that same system in Liberia. So for a very long time, those who were coming benefiting from that system, you could predict who would come out of that system and become successful. And then eventually we started to see those who they favor from among what you might call natives, for the lack of a better term, I would be using that term here, or indigenous, where the ones who they would favor to go through that. So they were making kings, picking winners and losers. Our education system was designed to pick winners and kick our losers, pretty much, whoever they determine were winners and who were actually losers. So we built a very colonial education system that mimics some of the very things that were used to suppress our people in Western societies. And sadly, that system has not changed. So when you see the makeup of the Liberian society, how it has emerged, that is exactly where it came from. I was joking with somebody today, and I said to them, if we had an equitable society, because people like to go to normal days as if normal day was great. I'm like, people like to reference normal day. I'm like, you guys are crazy. Normal day was terrible. Because if normal day was great, you wouldn't have had the overwhelming number of young people taking out guns and following Charles Taylor or following Prince Johnson. If normal day was that amazing and an equitable society, or at least a society that was serving everybody, there would not have been the kind of overwhelming support and, rebel leaders saw in whatever case. So let's reflect on that. So to answer your question directly, our education system came from a colonial, discriminatory, archaic form of education system that was designed to develop an elite society and not uplift people from poverty.
Cici, let's talk to you about that. So Leo just said something. He said Norman days was a disaster as far as education is concerned. Now, from your own standpoint, CZ, what do you think Liberia? I know Leah talked a lot about our educational system being designed on a colonial pedestal. The foundations were colonial based. What is your own standpoint? What is your viewpoint on that?
I agree with a lot of the things that Leo said. If you start to read primary sources from the foundation of Liberia, when our brothers and sisters who have been repatriated to Liberia were venturing into the hinterlands, it was meant as a crusade to civilize the savages. We all remember reading Mighty Dripper, right? Where the woman with her baby on her back is running from this savage African with a cutlass is trying to kill this woman and the African baby. We're teaching that in Liberian schools, by the way. And so the foundation of Liberia's educational system and its philosophy is not different from what happened in the US, because the foundation of our Liberian educational system was laid by Christian missionaries, right? And by American, quote, philanthropists, unquote. So you see, like the American Baptist missionary, the Episcopal Church, the Lutheran Church, the Catholic Church, they were all going in there. And education was seen as a tool for moral and religious instruction, right? And those instructions were supposed to be in Christian values, Western civilization, English literacy. And that is the reason you will find a Loma man in Yela going to school, and they can talk to you about all of the wars that Napoleon Bonaparte fought, all of the kings of England, but they cannot tell you the value of the Yela War that is still out there, that Liberians built over 100+ years ago to protect the territorial integrity of Liberia. A lot of people built that war. It has been there as long as the Chinese War has existed, but we don't talk about it. Because the reason for our educational system was not to educate us all. Right? It was very elitist. It was very urban-centric. When you start to think about those schools that go way back in the day, you start to mention some of the names like the Lord Carey and all those other places. Those were all for the elite. And so if education was not meant to uplift everybody, then it won't uplift everybody. The system worked the way it was designed to work. It is a function. What you put in, it does its magic. The way it was designed, it gives you that back. If I put a food in the microwave right now and press 3 minutes, and it turns for 3 minutes, I'm expecting, because of that function, to get a heated food out. If I get something out that is still very cold, I say that stuff is malfunctioning, because it is not working the way it was designed to work. Liberia's educational system was designed to pick winners and losers, the factory mindset, the way it happened in America. And just real quick, so before I go too long, linking back to what Leo said, that is the reason in my role as director of math, I understand the struggles. I can understand what Native Americans talk about when they talk about how, the system has failed them. Because I come from an indigenous background, and I talked to Native Americans here in Minnesota whose kids were taken from them and sent to boarding school to Christianized, and their names were changed in order for them to get this Westernized education. They had to be stripped from everything. I remember my own dad. I still joke with him. He went back to the regular name, but his name was David Goya from Zolowo. What David mean in Loma, right? He had that name because he needed that. The missionaries needed that for him to be able to go to school. And so everything that happened here in American society, in pre-independence America, got copied and got pasted in Liberia. And I joke with Leo the other day. I say we spy too much. We spy everything for America, then we spy the wrong answers. So we spy the people educational system, and we took and implement it in Liberia.
Well, thank you, my brother, for your eloquence, and those words were well stated. So, Pittman, let's go over to you, Dr. Kennedy. What is your own viewpoint? What do you think is the educational philosophy of Liberia?
Well, I think Leo and CZ unpacked everything pretty much, but just to draw and buttress the points, the copy and paste mentality, we structured the high school system, right? From primary school all the way to high school is that 633, you know, that sixth grade. First grade to sixth grade, and then seventh grade to ninth grade, and then 9 to 12. But what he said that's important is that was what they delivered, right? It's like delivering something to you that's poisonous for you, but sell it in a fake package, and you see it as value, but it's not value because again, it does not affect everyone. It's only limited. Now you use it as a means to reward certain individuals based on your liking, based on your criteria, right? So if you go to the interior and you bring little Johnny from there, now you are giving him privileges to come to school and learn what? The Western world of education. Now, who's to say English is the standard of education that we should be practicing anyway? Who's to say that? We are not teaching you in school in Moravia. Why would we teach you English? And these are the things that, for me, I would draw it a little deeper. It comes down to mindset and configuration of the mind, right? Because, and Leo made a point, an astounding point earlier to say that people kind of say that, hey, normal day was great because the minds were limited and oppressed. The minds were closed. A mind stretched beyond its original dimension can never return. That's why when guys come out and they expand their mind, they look back and say, no, that was not normal. That was not normal. If you have a child that came from the interior and came to live with you, right? He went to school in the afternoon at the government school while your children went to school in the morning at the Catholic school. There's something wrong with that. There's a problem with that. So the philosophy is not organic. It has not been organic, and it has to be recalibrated, in my opinion, as we go forward, right? Because it's based on this adopted philosophy. Now, having said all of that, right? There were a level of continuum. Again, you can kind of use it as a framework, as a blueprint, but you kind of fix it for your own liking, for your own fit, right? You got to outfit it for your, so that way it includes everyone. So we had the teachers training as well. That was kind of that was a continuum for continuous learning, so that way teachers were being developed. And now we're in a devastated state. I don't even know what we have. But at least we have something there that had teachers that were trained, whether it was at the Tubman training, the Zozor, and the Kakata Training Institute, that kind of kept the quality of the teachers alive and valid for training, right? But I can't say much more than what they just said. I think they unpacked everything. So we had a failed system that we kind of praised a lot, and I think it was oversold to us. So now we know we got to do better.
All right. So from what I've gathered from the deliberations so far, I think so when I decided on doing this series, I looked back and I wanted to cover a specific period. So I wanted to cover the period from 1847, right? So from 1847, when the settlers landed in Liberia, and then later on they decided to move inland. So they left the Perseverance Island in the Monrovia area and decided to move inland towards, Clay Ashland, Carisburg, Millsburg, and the rest of the other areas. And along their way, of course, they encountered the locals, the indigenous people. And the settlers came with a specific, already crafted, made ideology. They came with their own style of farming. They came with their own style of clothes making. They came with their own style of community building. So, gentlemen, looking at the system, the educational system, do you guys feel that one way or the other, that the folks that made up Liberia at the time, were they willing participants in building that system, or are they victims? Anybody can take that.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it almost like there was something that was dumped upon them that they had to kind of decipher how to embrace and how to kind of accept and tolerate, right? But at the same time, that new system, right, that adaptation brought some type of perceived value, albeit fake, but perceived, like, hey, I'm bringing you better, right? I'm bringing you better. Bring me in, embrace me with my concept, with my ideas, with my mentality of slavery and all of that, right? I'm bringing you value. I'm bringing you value in food, in education, in culture, and those types of things. So you being naive, again, not as an insult, but based on your mind, how it's set up, right? It's limited at that time. You kind of open it, and I can say that the indigenous people accept that with their hearts, right? It's a thing when you accept it with your heart that they were genuine and then they were open and welcoming, not knowing that this system that was coming was going to oppress them for years and hundreds of years. And now we have this divide that we don't understand how to bring back together. So that's my piece. I'll pass it over to the guys.
Yeah, so I'll say a few things about that here. From the onset, I wouldn't term them as willing participants in the first place. Or I wouldn't say willing. I would change the word willing to conscious participants. Because consciousness and willingness can be two different things altogether. Because you can be willing to do something, but are you conscious of what's fully happening, right? Because willingness sometimes is not enough to let you make the decision. Sometimes consciousness will help you know what you're doing, what is the real impact of what you're doing. Our brothers and sisters who were in the US or in the West knew no other way. You have to realize that this was generations later of slavery that have been taught that the only way you can succeed is to suppress those who you can control so that they work to help you to get to where you can get. That's what they've been taught for generations. So they didn't go back having three options, and to say that this is one option you can use, this is another option you can use, or this is another option. They went back knowing, because they saw the absolute success that the colonizers achieved as a result of slavery, the plantation. They saw the success across the board, the economic wealth these people developed on all levels. So they went back knowing that they were giving they saw in fact as an opportunity that the colonizers gave them to say, here's your own time now to become successful as well. Now, let's start there. Where I blame them for conscious participation is when they became aware, especially the ones who started to use both sides. The one who now understood what was happening and smartly were using both sides to still achieve the same goal and pretend as if they understood what was going on. And people like to praise when you call people names, their families get upset sometimes or whatever. Please, those listening, don't take names we mentioned tonight to be a personal thing. It's because of the position these people held. So there's not an attack against your family member or whatever. It's only because these people held prominent leadership positions in Liberia and were influential in some of the decisions that were made. Let's look at President Tolbert. President Tolbert was a very pivotal figure in Liberia. Served as vice president of President Tubman all these years. Nobody heard a lot from President Tolbert those years, right? So a child that was brought up from this system, all of a sudden President Tubman passes away, he becomes president and takes a kind of drastic turn, right? But what was interesting, what people still do not realize, people make it look like President Tolbert brought absolute freedom or whatever that is when he took over because of some of the progressive steps that he had. But those progressive steps were still being designed to still achieve the same outcome. Right? Now, I'm not here to argue if President Tolbert was a good man or a bad man or not. Brilliance is not an argument. President Mortimer Tolbert Jr. was a brilliant man. That is not a debate. Take that to the people can say to the bank. But what I'm trying to say is the sophistication of President Tolbert knowing both sides of how he immersed himself, for example, with the Pele people of Liberia, but yet then still was a son and child of this movement for this long time, and how he's in a very sophisticated manner and intersected that to get what he wanted to get, to the point where it eventually led to his own demise in different ways from different sides. I would say, as of the point when native or indigenous children, and we're using these terms loosely here tonight, so please nobody take it out of context. When indigenous children started to go to school, and it was the LU of those days, and started to be very aware, started becoming more and more aware of what was happening, I believe that was the opportunity for our brothers and sisters who had come and only knew one way to start to say, maybe we need to have a conversation here, a real conversation of what this country is. The fact that they did not only institute English, but they decided to abolish the indigenous languages. That for me is willing and conscious participation, because there was no reason why English could not still function in the society and all these other languages could not be uplifted. The fact that there was an intentional, calculated effort to almost erase these languages, not just the languages, the cosmologies of them, the histories of them. The fact that there was this calculated attempt to almost make it look like before 1847, nothing existed, that this place existed in a vacuum. For me, that's conscious and willing participation. But from the onset, I would say they were willing participants in an unconscious way.
So would you say, real quick, that's good. That's a great point, Leo. Would you say they were victims initially then?
Yeah, yes, I would agree that initially they themselves were victims of the situations they have been put through. But there comes a point when the victim gets empowered and has been exposed to other things, so you can no longer excuse yourself of not being aware of what is happening. But I agree, from the very onset, they themselves were just as victims without even realizing that they were.
Absolutely.
Amazing. And that's why I asked the question, because it's important to understand whether it was at the beginning or at the end, or what level of participation these two cultures had to play at any given point. But Cece, let's go over to you. Let's hear you on this point. Do you think our people, when I mean our people, the indigenous folks or Liberians that encounter the settlers, do you think they were willing participants, or do you think they were victims of circumstances?
So 20 years ago, you asked me this question. I agree with Leo 100%, and I would say it's sour and I'm done. But Dr. Pittman says something about the elasticity of knowledge, right? Or the inelasticity of the mind once it's encountered knowledge. So what I've read over the years has gotten me from this strong native lumberman stance is that my time in the U.S. and my time in the U.S. educational system and seeing how education was used, abused, and misused as a tool to control folks. If you try to learn American history now in many schools, especially in the South, America began with the coming of the Europeans. They washed away the natives, the native story, the native way of knowing. It is only now that in states like the state of Minnesota, where we passed a law, a statute that says that we have to include Native American way of learning in our curriculum. Now, America the Great is fighting to find how are Native Americans doing math? How are they doing social studies? Now we're fighting to do that, but it's in very few places. So you take a few people that have been subjugated to slavery, to the worst possible way a human being can be exposed to negative stuff, and without proper training, and I would dare argue without a therapy to disabuse them of what they have seen as true, because the slave, the plantation worked to the way they were supposed to work, and these slaves were in there seeing these people successful, and they're like, well, but this system works because it gets these people to this point. And so if that's all I know, and there's nothing else to challenge me, we have today, and I'll just digress for a little bit, we have today Liberians in Liberia who are teaching, who've never left Liberia, but teach in a Eurocentric way. Because the KRTTI, the ZRTTI that were training these people, were training them in a Eurocentric way of teaching. And so even here in the US, one of the pieces that I push to my colleagues is that you can be a Black man and still teach racist ways. So to be anti-racist does not necessarily mean that by being Black, you are anti-racist. Because of the way you were trained, your philosophy, the way you look at success, the way you grade civilization, and whatever you claim that to be, and the way you think about learning, the way you discount indigenous knowledge. And that's what Leo talked about, indigenous knowledge. I will argue that a lot of these people from the first batch of free slaves that went back home, they were perpetuating the system that they had. They didn't know any other. Let's not excuse the wrong that happened because of that. You know, there is intent and there's impact, right? Their intent, I don't think, was to visit upon our people what had gone on with them if they had known any better, if they had known any differently, if their mind had interacted with things that challenged them. Yes, I agree. Some of these folks came in contact with the likes of King Salboso, came in contact with the likes of Madame Swakoko, came in contact with enlightened people, like later on the Detour and all those people that came and were yelling and Aberport and all these people. Yes, but I will also dare argue with you that there were sons of the villages who themselves, not being conscious in traditional knowledge, helped perpetuate the very sufferings that were exported in those ships that landed in Liberia. And so I will argue that, yes, there might have been vestiges from the first maybe 50 years, right? But I'll argue that the people who, the settlers who went to Liberia the first 50 years from 1821 all the way through, I will argue that they were only doing what they knew. They hadn't been exposed to anything differently. They don't know anything differently. And even to this day, we still have people unintentionally perpetuating this. We still don't validate or value indigenous knowledge systems. And I like the fact that when Leo started talking, he talked about educational system. Because whenever I'm introduced anywhere to speak in this America, the first thing I say is that my grandfather was a professor. He was a professor at the Poro University. I am a proud graduate of the Poro schools. And I went to those schools to learn engineering, to learn accounting, to learn business, to learn economics, and all of those things that kept a system and made people successful, however way they define success. And so I will argue in closing that, yes, there might have been some of those. But if you think back to the mindset that these people carry, a lot of them were Christians. Because to be Christian at the time meant you were enlightened, meant you were civilized. And so to go into the heathens, that's why we used to call it the hinterland, to get these heathens, right, to civilize these heathens, these people that are running behind this woman, Mighty Dripper, with a cutlass to kill her, is sometimes you had to be vicious. They only know what they know. I'm not excusing it, but as we move forward into the 1930s and upward, we find it very difficult to excuse those behaviors because now the world is open. You had a VOA, you had all of these things you knew better. There were countries around us that we were helping to gain independence from the white slavery, and yet we were doing black slavery. Now that is inexcusable. But before then, I will argue that folks before then knew very little, and so they were just doing what they knew.
No, Manny, just a quick point.
Go ahead, my brother. You keep flowing.
The highway.
I'm learning. I'm taking notes.
Yeah. I'm
learning a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a mentor of mine who says the highway to hell is paved with good intentions. Well, in Liberia, so people in the street take out my trash and people. And you know better. I don't know why someone tell me. You know the highway.
We got telephone.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry, guys. That's good. I have a mentor who said the highway to hell is paved with good intentions. If you talk to all the people in hell, they were well-intentioned, all of them. Not one of them were intending to do something bad, but their outcomes send them to hell. When I in Liberia, I took out my pants and pee, same way, in the street. I knew no better. Nobody could tell me that I was wrong. It made sense. I come to Canada. I managed to learn to not take out my trash and pee in the street. When I go back to Liberia, when people tell me I can drive till I get to somewhere, because just consciously, I'm not able, but I can do it. Nothing will happen. I could still stop by the roadside, get all of my car, take out my tea, and pee there. Nothing will happen to me. But I'm being more conscious now. So, like Cici said from the beginning, they were unconscious participants, in my opinion. But as of the 1930s and upward, they became conscious and willing participants to perpetuate the hegemony and the power that they had amassed as a result of the system.
So Leo, real quick, Leo, I think the 1930s and above, in your analogy about not pissing in the street, and now the Decembrists that can go back to Liberia and leave America and stay piss in the street.
Yeah. They are the craziest
Conscious
people.
stay away.
They are
All right,
conscious
all
and
right.
willing people that are causing problems in the country.
No, let's get
So,
back. No, go ahead.
so I'll pull that thread a
You wanna
little
say
bit.
something?
I'll pull that thread and I'll slightly differ on something.
Sorry, guys, I have a little thing I have to do to catch, please. I'll be
Go
back.
ahead. Go ahead.
From a basic humanistic standpoint, right? I think we all can agree that right and wrong, in most cases, don't have to be taught. You have an innate feeling. For instance, what do I mean? I know that if I hit you, it's wrong to hit you, right? I mean, I don't need to be taught that. Even if I'm oppressed for so long, at some point in time, I know it's wrong, right? See, right? I think we can agree.
Well, let me. I'm not cutting you off, but let me say something to that.
Yeah.
I think there are universal standards of right and wrong, but then there's also cultural standard, meaning what is right in one culture may not be right in another
As an individual, as a human being, forget about culture, forget about tribe, affiliation, as an individual.
But Dr. Pittman, that will depend on your upbringing, because what is determined, what is value? The value system helps you determine what is good or wrong, because what was good many years ago in some places is now being determined as bad. And folks who live in that good system,
fundamental human engagements, right? I know that a kid knows that when they hit another kid, that's a feeling. There's something there that's not right about that. Do they have to be taught if that's right or wrong? Would you?
Yeah.
I still talking about. There are some kids that punch other kids in kindergarten and they walk away.
Let's not drift too much.
We're not drifting. We're not drifting. This is within the context, and that's what I mean by that. I feel like the folks that went back that were oppressed, first of all, they knew it was wrong when it was done to them. So the fact that they were treating others like that made them complicit in what they were doing. So I think part of that become inexcusable. That's the first piece. But even so, right? I felt like the intent was to oppress because it gave them power, that artificial sense of power. So if I oppress you, then I'm lifted. And the only way I can sustain my elevated level is by oppressing you and keeping you oppressed. So I think, I'm not sure if that can be credited with ignorance or they didn't know better. I felt like they knew what they were doing. So that's the point I wanted to make. Over.
Well, that's a very interesting point, my brother. But I know Leo was talking about the 1930s.
Yeah.
Right. So I was looking back when I was doing, my readings, getting ready for the podcast. One of the things I realized is the Ministry of Education in Liberia was founded in 1904. All right. So 1904 Liberia. So imagine the country was founded by 1847. So 1847, 1900. So that's what, 43 years plus 4, 47. So that's maybe 47 years after independence when we founded the first Ministry of Education. Now you can only imagine what that Ministry of Education looked like, given the background of the settlers. Because Liberia, as we know it, was not founded by the indigenous people. Liberia was founded by the settlers, the people who came back from America. So the reason why I'm laying that foundation is it leads up to my next question. And that next question is, when the Ministry of Education was founded, now this could be a wild guess, but for the sake of our conversation, I mean, we're going to leave it open, right? We're going to throw out a blank canvas so people can write on it and paint a picture of what that ministry looked like. Because I try to dig. Trust me, I try to look back and see if I could find some information. But the only thing that I found was a lot of the curriculum at the time was Christian and Western centric. So meaning a lot of the teachings, a lot of the philosophy was based on Christianity in Western style education. Now, given the fact that our people already had their own form of education on the ground, meaning, as we know it today, the poor society and the sandy society.
Yeah.
How do you think the foundation of the system back then, how did it benefit the elites as compared to the indigenous folks? How do you think the education, being founded in 1904, leading up to 1930, like Leah said, how do you think that system benefited the both sides?
Oh, absolutely. It kept the elite where they needed to be at an elevator level, right? Because that was part of their proposal, their value proposition. Hey, not only are we coming, but we are bringing you this elite level system, this educational system like no other, like you've never seen before, and you can squash anything you ever had, right? So that whole independence piece, that whole mindset, that whole configuration brought it, but to his point, to Leo's point earlier, and to what CZ was talking about, they kept it and they preserved it, and almost like they rationed it. You know, they kind of selected who could participate and benefit. So they kept that for years and they sustained that system. And then he said until they realized that guys were going to the university and were performing exceptionally well. And sometimes that's hard to take when you already have prescribed what the trajectory should be, and people break ranks. So people were breaking ranks and they couldn't live with that. So, you know, we have this result that we have today that has been a continuum of that system. So the elites use that system to keep themselves at that elevator level. But it has been devastating. It has been broken down now.
Yeah. I mean,
I think that education, and I will keep going back and forth between Liberia and the U.S. because those are the two countries that I know very well about education. I graduated high school in Liberia. As a matter of fact, my first job, you know how kids can get McDonald's job? My first job was teaching. Right out of 12th grade, I had just taken the WIAC. And the very next year, I got hired to teach elementary math. And a year after that, I was teaching 9th graders mathematics, just fresh out of high school. Because of the war, we had killed a lot of other people who knew math. So anybody who could clearly add 1 + 1 without a calculator were using it.
Go ahead, my brother.
So I'm going to go back and forth on that. Because educational systems in both America and Liberia were started by Christians, by religious orders, there was an underpinning reason for that. And then with America, when it became the factory model, we were just training folks to go out into the factory. And then we're going to determine who's going to be winners and who's losers, and we're going to place them in certain places. And I think Leo spoke about the inequity in the way of resources are distributed in the U.S. among school system. I was just talking to Dr. Pittman right now about my school, Minneapolis, where we're having a little strike action right now. And you have other schools that are like, in the Minnetonkas and all those other places that are very affluent that got more. I was in Brooklyn Center that is considered to be an economic desert or wilderness. And our kids had a bare bone. They had a skeleton, right? You will go to other schools and have options to do 500 other things. At BC, you were restricted because we didn't have much money. I'm saying this to say that the system was set up, and education, even to today's date in Liberia and in America, I will argue to a greater extent, is still set up as a way of sifting. And it is this Darwinism, but except not natural Darwinism. It's a survival of the fittest, except where we test your fitness is through education. And we're going to make that access not available. If you read the Liberian Constitution, it asks for educational system to be available, equitable throughout the country. We don't do that. And so that is the reason right now, even in Liberia, educational system is still used as an elitist way of gauging who's successful and who's not. That's why the University of Liberia does not give a placement exam. It gives an entrance exam, because we build a gate in order for you to enter this gate versus we're available to everybody. Come as you are. We will place you based on your ability and move you forward. So we still have that elitist, Eurocentric, colonial mindset around education. So we don't make it available to all. And then I will end real quick with this. And those people who are listening to us, to just check for yourself. As you leave the center of Monrovia, going any side to the rural side, the further away you are from the center of Monrovia, the lower your access, the fewer access to education you have, and the lower the quality of education, and the lower the quality of educators. And so back to what Dr. Pittman said when we talk about having the ZRTTIs and the KRTTIs that were training back then, yeah, sometimes one is better than zero, right? And we had all of those, C certificate folks, and where were they teaching? In the hinterlands. There were not a C certificate person teaching at La Curie or a Ricks Institute or a CWA, right? So that elitism is still there, and we're still perpetuating it long after the people who settled Liberia have been dead and gone, and we've had country children, the native people children take over. We still are perpetuating that knowingly or unknowingly.
Yeah. So I would just show the two ways to be direct with your question. That's how did the system benefit both sides, right? And how, if any. And it's the most difficult question to answer, because that's what people throw at you all the time. Oh yeah, but see the type of education, then they would show the Burma families of the world, the Amos Sawyers. They point to all of these people, the Tobana Tipote, the Chair Chipo, the late Chair Chipo, and they point to these people as if to say it's a trophy of saying this was good, this was this good. So I really want to answer that question carefully. There are two things. One, I would look at the effect on what I would call our brothers and sisters who came from the US, who were brought in, and their generations after. It benefited them by allowing them to use schooling to consolidate their bureaucratic control, right? They legitimized political authority using this tool so effectively because nobody could challenge them on it. When it came, nobody could. Whether it was substandard that it came, or whether what they knew, or even the correct way they were doing it, there was absolutely no challenge. So they managed to use it to consolidate their bureaucratic control and legitimizing political authority. But here's another thing they use it to do that most people don't pay attention to. They use it to reproduce cultural prestige. They use it in a way that demonize and kind of delegitimize what they met and reproduce this new cultural prestige that made everybody, there you go, that made everybody everybody felt they were not good enough, that made everybody to think how stupid could we have been.
So instead of learning how to build baskets and mats, and now the most important thing is learning how to drive a trailer tractor,
exactly,
or to put a roof on that. Okay,
exactly.
I get it.
Yeah,
Carry on, my brother.
Yeah, exactly. So they reproduce, and the crazy thing is that these things could have coexisted. It's not like one had to be. You could have found a way, and because our society now became broader. Those who came back were now members of our society. So there's no way you couldn't say what they've learned was also not part of what Liberia was supposed to become. So they use this to reproduce their cultural prestige. But even beyond the cultural prestige, what they did was literacy and Western education enabled their dominance in every aspect of the society: administration, commerce, law. Like, they didn't leave any area untouched. Every aspect of it. Now let's go to what we might call the indigenous for the sake of this conversation. What was the impact on them? The effect of this on them? It provided some access, because they were forced to provide them some access, because at some point you only had 300 families by and large. So you didn't have the numbers to have control a vast entire country. So you had to create some kind of system and let somebody get some kind of limited access so that they had enough for you to use them to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish. So it created some kind of limited access, I would call it. But it also gave indigenous people who enter schools the opportunity to gain literacy and bureaucratic skills. If you're teaching me how to shoot a gun because you want me to mine your gate, what you didn't realize is that you're teaching me how to shoot a gun. Even though you think I should only use it to mine your gate, what you forgot is the day I decide that I want to shoot you, I can shoot you too, because I already know how to shoot a gun. Yeah. So what they didn't realize, they were so naive to think that training these people and giving them unlimited access would have only been limited, and they would have been subservient servants and remain doing that. They never thought about what if these people decide to rebel using the very tool that we have now given them to actually control them. So natives, I would say, benefited in that way. They gained those skills, and then they could leverage them for, some of them leverage them very well for local leadership, wage labor to get paid much higher, or even trade, right? And now early on, you will realize it produced a little bit of mobility for that generation, that crew that came to UL. That whole crew whose parents were working in the interior, deep in the mines, deep in the trenches, making fun because they were not literally educated. Their children came to what became the University of Liberia and settled in the Niku towns, the Puse quarters, the West Points, because they could not afford to pay rent in the usual Sincor that was around. So for me, from my end, and this is why I see very well, the effect on the elites was simple. They expanded the secondary and mission schools to produce a growing professional class that was limited just to them. So everything from the clerks, the clergy, these positions were them. On the marginalized indigenous people, and by the way, some of the American Liberian families too were among the marginalized. People forget that. It was not all of those people that were, some of them were kicked out. Yeah. So, or some of them for their disagreements were also kicked out. So there were some of those families that were also just as marginalized as indigenous people that found themselves in this situation. And what it did for me, the actual effect to conclude on this, will be it provided vocational skills. It increased employability. And Native people started being able to get into certain spaces, whether it was government posts or commerce, and it helped them to empower what I would call intermediaries at the time. Those people that were put at that level. And by and large, it started to trickle down. Because what it did, if I was an intermediary, right, where they took and gave me some limited mobility, I got a little bit of education or whatever. Because of that, my cousins, my nephews, my nieces, or whatever, too, got some little bit of mobility and access through my access as well. So this was the real impact. Would I call it benefit versus not benefits? I wouldn't call it that. I would call it an outcome of the system, and it had positive effects in some areas, and it had, detrimental, devastating, negative effects in some areas. But I wouldn't say benefit versus not. I would just say I'll call it as outcomes, which in some cases you can point to positives, but the negative effects were very detrimental.
Yeah, let's go over to you, Pittman. Do you have anything to?
Well, that circles back to what we said earlier when you came talking about it was polarized because of the copycat mentality from the slaves that came back. So access was very limited to the indigenous people, and we kind of they rationed it, like you said, they rationed who they wanted to. But here's the thing, the fact that it wasn't available to all, again, like he said, it's an outcome. It's hard to look at it positively when, if you have access to education, but it's only limited to certain people, then it's a real access. So I'm not sure.
It's like saying if you give me a gun to mine your gate, and one day I was sitting there, radio was passing, and I shot the radio and got meat. Yeah. Can I say it's a benefit because you give me a gun to mine your gate? It's a positive outcome. I shot a deer. I got meat in my house for 1 month. But to draw a direct correlation is hard for me. But yes, you can point to positive outcomes that happen as a result of that system in very limited ways. You can't just say, oh, everything were all absolute negative outcomes. But I wouldn't necessarily, because benefit is much more intentional. Benefit would be, I designed this thing to benefit CZ in this particular way. Yeah. So that's much more intentional. But if I design this thing to suppress CZ, but in the process of it, CC was able to leverage it and use it in a way that got positive outcomes, then those are outcomes rather than benefits.
You know what? Go ahead.
I was going to say real quick that, as Leo is talking, I'm thinking about it in a medical frame of mind, my stem cells coming out, and that is a side effect, right? You got given a gun, you weren't designed for that, and you shot a deer. That was a side effect. One classic case is the erectile dysfunction pill, right? That was being studied for heart stuff, and they found out that it can make you knock your jaw, and so that was a side effect, but that was not what it was actually designed for. My men know the blue pills I'm talking about, but
No, leave it, man. Go ahead. When you see you going down that road, just cut it off.
I know. See, yeah, now I'm knowledgeable, man. I swear. But anyway, look, listen. Very, very interesting, right? But here's what I want us to do for the sake of this conversation, because my point, what I'm trying to get to is we hear stories, we read history, and a lot of times when you look at our culture, our system, our government, our society, and you see how far we've come and all the challenges that we still have, a lot of people will look back and say it was because of this, it was because of that, you know. But for the sake of this conversation, I want us to go down the list. Let's look at the pros. What were some of the good things that came out of that system? Let's look at some of the bad things as well. Let's try to list it down. Because in my heart of hearts, right? I don't think everything was bad. Equally so, I don't think everything was good. So let's go down the list. Let's look at the pros. Let's start with the pros. All right, looking at the system, the educational system that was introduced from 1904 onwards, what are some of the good things? What are some of the bright spots?
I can start because Dr. Pim, you want to start?
For me, I mean, you're looking at 4 right here on this screen. That you cannot underestimate or understate the foundation of where we started in Liberia. You know, I will make a point first, and then I will elaborate a little bit. You know, part of this system that we just kind of dissected also kind of put certain schools at certain levels, and if you didn't attend certain schools, you were not considered to be educated or whatever. You know, we can go down to the Catholic schools and some of those so-called elite schools, right? See, so and it was, you were deemed to not be as smart or brilliant if you didn't go to one of those schools, which is also a myth. It doesn't matter, right? So what we got foundationally, I went to a school called Old Lady Crawford, Elizabeth Crawford, right on Newport Street and Carey Street. That was I started my kindergarten. I'll never forget, was to wear blue uniform. We went from there before I went to Cathedral. Then I ended up with Wellheston, right? And that's that stigma, leaving Cathedral, going to Wellheston. Again, that's a stigma. Sometimes you get considered in a certain category. But
it's like a downgrade.
I'm here today, right? You see what I mean? So I think foundationally what we all gathered was some elements of discipline, some fundamental math principles, you know, how to read, science, and those things that we built upon. See, once you build your house, the foundation is important. Once you have that foundation, then guys like Leo, guys like yourself, normally guys like Caesar can fly. No matter what part of the world they go to, because now the baseline is set. So those are the good. I'm not going to get into the specific subjects as we went to middle school and high school, but the foundation, I think, as a whole was great. And you see Liberians all around today in the diaspora in the world, they're kind of making it. I mean, look at Caesar. This guy, I was talking to him last week. I was so impressed. This man should be leading the strategic direction for mathematics in Liberia right now.
Not mathematics, the whole education system.
I'm telling you, brother to brother. I'm telling you, you know,
the man guiding the border. Like, so.
You look at Leo here, right? Leo has set. Leo's a transformational change agent and more. These are, you know, these are guys that should be setting the strategic direction for the country, right? So that's come from foundation, and I think foundation was solid for us. I'll let them elaborate a little bit.
No, it's a very important question, and this is where sometimes we all struggle, because depending on what side you air, people, you know, Liberia is a very polarized society. Everybody want to identify with what's most convenient. You get some of the people who are not indigenous, all of a sudden when convenient, they're looking for what tribe their mama used to speak to try and attach it to themselves. Then you get some of the people there who are indigenous. All of a sudden they're looking for which Congo person in their mind and live with to try and make it look like, you know, both sides. People, because we've developed such a polarized society that we are refusing to embrace and just accept who we are, right? And I've said it all the time to people, like it or don't like it, you have to accept all of the mixtures of what Liberia is. The bad, the good, the ugly, we need to take up all and then figure out how we make it work together. Yeah. It can't be one group acting self-righteous against the other. No matter who you thought was bad or good, it's not going to lead us anywhere. So when you're ready to talk about your Congo people versus native people, we got country born them from Bogonima them, from Zienzu them, from, you know, coming now, building 6 feet fences and putting dog to the gate and claiming to be the new Congo people. And you know, like, this crazy stuff. But to your question, there are a few things I would like to highlight in terms of pros, I would say to you. Now, whether they were designed intentionally or not, it doesn't matter, because we can look in hindsight and be able to clearly see it. You know, hindsight is the best thing ever. If people were being asked to prove themselves in hindsight, nobody will actually fail. Everybody will pass because you can see the thing clearly and make your analysis. One, it established some of the earliest form of formal Western schools in West Africa. Earliest.
Yeah.
You can go to some of the oldest ever.
University of Liberia.
Exactly.
1862.
1862, exactly. And this is how I describe it. You know, a knife. Right now, we're all sitting in one house together, and there was a knife in the hands of a chef. We all would be laughing because we know something good is happening in the kitchen. Because when chefs pick up knife, that means they're cooking, they're preparing something. But in that same room, if somebody walked in that room with a set of knife around your waist and was a robber, we all would be running.
Perspective.
It's the same knife. It's just whose hands it's in and how it's being used.
Yeah.
So these institutions by themselves are neutral. And you know,
you just describe leadership.
Yeah, the way humans construct them and allow them to operate was what happened. So to treat them neutrally, I would say it was an opportunity for us because the world became globalized eventually. So learning those systems as well gave an edge when globalization started to take its hold, that you could have an understanding, okay, of what this thing is because I've been exposed to it before, good or bad. Remember, slavery, and you know, all of that stuff was the order of the day. It was considered moral. It was the right of the day. So good luck asking somebody that there was something else. The second piece for me is it produced Western educated leaders and professionals who maintain governance and international recognition of Liberia's sovereignty. As a result of that, Liberia was playing, like some of the roles that Liberia was playing on the global stage. Now, remember, that was the system of the day. I know we can criticize it for all we want or whatever, from League of Nations to United Nations. That was the world order of the day. And we were able to participate in that. Whether we were allowing our people to benefit from it or we kept it to ourselves, that's a different layer of the conversation. But we have people from Liberia, in Liberia, who could sit at those tables and earn the respect of whoever was there.
Totally agree.
Exactly. So for me, that's another pro. Another pro was that it created an early intellectual and literary culture of writing. Our culture is a very oral culture. And nothing against it, because that's just one form of expression and education. But there's nothing that hurts if you get another one added to it. And you know, if you're a very oral, good storyteller, and then you've managed to learn to read and write at the same time and add it to it, and even English. There's nothing wrong with knowing your language and learning another major global language, which was English, to actually function. Those, for me, were some of the clear pros. The cons, for me, education was exclusive. It was designed to only civilize rather than liberate, or rather than uplift. It was not designed. Exactly. It was designed to create an elite society. So it was a con. Another one, indigenous Liberians were largely excluded from formal Western education systems. They were viewed as subjects to be uplifted rather than equals to be empowered. And then we look at indigenous languages, right? Oral traditions and systems of communal knowledge that were delegitimized and omitted from any systemic institution that was being created, as if it was not the way of life or another sophisticated way. Like Cece said, you go to the Poorer Society, you learn everything. It's a whole university by itself.
It is.
They were all excluded. So for me, if you take pros and cons, right, there are actually pros and cons to both sides, which is why it's painful to watch when today we've allowed the same people, some of them are alive, who participated in these things, have allowed Liberian history to become such a convoluted, contested mess. And they're still alive. I will call their names, from the HB family to the Dr. Claudia Sawyer, who just passed away not too long ago. All of them are still here. Why you can help us get these stories straight when some of you sat in the rooms when these discussions were actually going on?
Well, Leo, that was a critical point. And I think the conversation gets diluted, and the reason why it's so diluted again is something that you talked about earlier, simply because of the polarization of our society. You know, we don't want to hold hands together and talk about the things that will drive us in unison. We often want to form all these different parties, you know, and different units, and focus on our disagreements instead of focusing on, you know, those aspects of our lives and our society that will drive us forward. But I totally agree with you. I totally agree. We need to have more Liberian writers, or we need to have more Liberian educators, and we need to have a national conversation, an agenda that we can sit together like this and talk about the pros and cons of the roots of our Liberian educational system. Because once we have that conversation, then we're comfortable enough to say, okay, what are the next steps? As we're having this conversation, I'm tempted to slide down to episode 3 of our engagement, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm so tempted to say, okay, then what is the next way forward? But let's, we'll get there.
But I think the greatest pro that I forgot for this whole thing was Liberia's positioning to lead the independence movement on the African continent.
Amen.
If there was the greatest benefit, in my opinion, from the Osajo Fort, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, to Ezekiel from Nigeria, to Liberia being the first ever country to take apartheid to the International Court of Human Rights and won the case, actually, against an apartheid government in both Namibia and South Africa, to shooting Nelson Mandela for 6 months in Liberia, undercover when the CIA was after him. So I think if there was a universal pro that we can look at, was this early system positioning Liberia to lead the independence movement on the African continent that most African countries still revere Liberia for today.
And that's something, right? And that thing is, we continue to hide or to seclude the brightest and the best parts of ourselves. And the reason why I'm saying that is because when the settlers came, there was available, or there was an existing form of university or high school teaching, if you want to put it that way, where young men were taught how to take care of themselves, take care of their family, provide for their society, protect, their environment. Then a new group of people came and pushed that on the side and said, okay, we have a new system. Let's put that system in place. And then all of a sudden, we forgot about everything that made us a society. Every now and then, we try to reach back for that bright spot, but then we get pulled away from it just because of all the polarization. But Cece, let me ask you this. Looking at the current system, because I've strongly believed that the system that were introduced by the settlers still exists. I don't think it has changed. All right. We go back and forth talking about the challenges in our nation, amongst our people. And too often we focus a lot on the challenges other than the solutions. All right. How do we shift that conversation? How do we shift that conversation from, all right, these were the challenges, this is what happened from 1847 till 19 or 2020 or 2025? How do we shift? How do we shift that gear? How do we look, given everything that we know now, how do we shift? How do we pivot? Where is the pivot? Where does that pivot happen?
Well, the lever to shift, I think, lies in all of our hands. The ability to acknowledge that you have their lever, I think, is what is limited to a few people. And I think those people are tasked. And I see 3 of them here, the 3 of you, with the responsibility of propagating that. Because some people have strength and power. They just don't know they have the strength and the power. I talk about that a lot of times during elections, about the power of the voter, right? But there are other things, right? And before we get to that, we just wanted to touch on one thing. Talk about the positives and the pros and the cons. And tell people, if there's nothing wrong, and you'll touch it, about knowing your enemy. If Europe was our enemy and European ideas are our enemy, there's nothing wrong with learning how to speak, because you got to speak to them. even in the courts of King Sao Boso, or when you read about the great Masa Kanka Musa and all of these empires and stuff. If you remember in Timbuktu, the cradle of learning, people came from other places, another empire, to come and learn the way of the Malian Empire.
They had the greatest library.
Yes, people went there to learn their way. And so it happened that we didn't have to come all the way to America to learn the American way. They came to us. There were so many side effects, yes, but that was a positive, because it taught us the way to live on this one planet with other people. That is why the likes of Madame Swakoko, when you read about her, she had soldiers in her army that weren't just Pele people. They had people that spoke other languages that were in her tribe, because you had to send these scouts out, and you had to have these people who were your advisors that could speak to other kings and chiefs in the languages and in the traditions that they understood. So I don't fault us or the settlers for bringing an Americanized, Eurocentric educational system to Liberia. I think we just refuse to change it to fit us. You know, I went to Numeni's house, and Numeni had a kosu, and I borrowed it, and I decided to wear the same way, forgetting that Numeni way taller than me, and I need to hem it, I just wear it and drag it behind me. So the coat that looked very nice on Numeni now look like I'm a reminder of my uncle, the former finance minister, right now as I'm speaking. But yeah, we
former finance minister, former foreign minister.
Foreign minister, we're from the border. But
they can't forget about chewing shit as well.
I went to Catholic school, man. All we did for a living. So back to this piece. What for me this educational system created for me when I was in Liberia and learning, it didn't the way I got value from knowing about my tradition was because my dad made me go to Lofakante every vacation. I would go with my grandfathers, and I would listen to the stories, and I started to value my culture. There were cousins of mine whose parents didn't do that. They didn't. You ask them in Loma and say, "I don't speak that thing." They never went on the farm. Will come from the village after vacation. They'll come in village boy and everything, because for them to fit in, to be seen as civilized, to be seen as having evolved, is to put a far enough distance between themselves and the villages that they came from, right? And so for me, the way I lead now is I sit here, everything that I learned in math, what I've been doing in the last 15 years is trying to connect to the back home. That's why I had a podcast one time. I was teaching math in Loma, and I was teaching our people that the counting system, this counting system that we call the Hindu-Arabic system. If any of you here, I know you speak Pele, but I don't know what Dr. Pittman speaks, and I know what I'm many can understand Pele. But I will try for you in Loma and Pele, all the other tracks. In Loma, when you start in Pele, when you start to count, you go down, Vele, Hawa, now, Nolu. That's 5, right? Now 5 plus 1. Men Fele, 5 plus 2. Men Sava, 5 plus 3. So then you get a pool. When we all get a pool, that's the decimal system I'm coming to. You count from 0 to 9. Yeah. No number exists outside of 0 to 9.
No, it doesn't.
10 is not a number.
Yeah.
Right? When you get to 9, you say the next number divided by 10. 10 goes into the next number, 1 time remainder 0, that's 1 0. 10 goes into the next number, 1 time remainder 1, that's 1 and 1, that's 11. The Pele people, the Loma people say, Pugo Kai Gla.
Yeah.
10 is Pugo. Kai Gla is plus 1.
And in Pele, 10 is Pu, and in 11 is Pukautono. 10 and 1 C.
Yeah, 10 with 2 C's, 2 left behind. Exactly. 10 remainder 3. 10 remainder 4. You get to 20 in Loma, we say, when you get to Pugo, then you go Zeflugo, 2 hands, right? 2 set of hands. Yeah. Now we're doing multiplication. We're telling you 2 times 10. When you get to 30, we don't say 30. We say 2 times. We say 3 times 10. Yeah. And it's the same way that the system that we use counts. When you get to 99, you have to create a new place value in the number system because you gotta go to 100. Right? We all remember that Y2K.
So it's 30, but it's broken down at the vernacular level.
At the vernacular. So the way you do when your children come home with elementary math, you get, you're breaking it down in place value, you say 35. You say 3 tenths and 5 ones. It's exactly how we count in Loma. We
So
say
in Pele 20, for example, we'll say Pufela. So 2 tenths.
2 tenths.
Yeah, so Pufela, and then you can go on from
right.
from
So
there.
you call it in the place values. And when you get to a 99 in our Hindu Arabic system, you create a new place value. Now you got 100. In Loma, we count in the hands until you get to 99, and you get 9 set of tens and 9 set of ones. That's 99. The next number to create the next place value, we call it wungla, 1 head. Now it's bigger.
It's the exact thing in Pele Mundono.
We're not counting the hands no more. We move the place value.
I'm getting a whole lesson on impeller and
I'm telling you.
but even I asked my crown brothers. I've been doing the research on this. I need to publish it. I haven't yet. But I asked some people. I asked my crown brothers. I asked people.
It's the same system.
It's
the same system.
That's not the count. Yeah. And so you answer for me this question, no many. We, the Pele people, the Loma people, the Bassa people, the Kids people, we did not come to Europe.
No.
Right?
No.
But the Europeans came down the coast and they used to come and trade with us. And the Northern Africans used to come and trade with us and they traded up. And so when they got their system from the Arab, who got it from us? If my system matches your system and I didn't come to you and keep to me, who's spying on it?
That means you took it from me.
Beginning, the Europeans were spying from us. But when our brothers and sisters went back to Africa, they decided that what we had that was not good enough, we have to now spy from the Europeans.
And they didn't realize it's the same thing that enslaved them. What is European spy from us is what they took.
So you go to school in Lofa County, and you go home, and you think what you're learning is different from what you're going. No, I will end with this one thing real quick. My grandmother never went to traditional school. She was a Sunday chief. And when we used to go buy goods in the market, in Loma, we count money in multiples of 5s, 10s, and 20s. Mm. And to say 50 cents, they will tell you 2 20s and 1 10. I will call 50 cents in Loma. 2 20 cents and 1 10 cent.
How do you say that? Say it in Loma.
Send the flogo 9. Send the flogo. So send it that 20 flogo. So when we count on the 5.
So if I meet the artist 50 cents.
Yeah, and then I send the flogo 9, man.
Send the flogo 9.
Send the flogo 9. That's the man, 50 cents. But even so the critical piece I'm trying to get to is you get to a 75 cents. We say Senisago, we say 3 20s and 15 cents. Senisago 18. Mm. We were all calculators. They were breaking down numbers, right? The point to your question about the lever is the lever is in our hand. I had to leave Liberia to come here and have to have that consciousness to start to think back. But we still have a Yakawolo in Zoro, my hometown, teaching mathematics without aligning it to the indigenous ancestral knowledge that our people got. So when you ask the question, how do we pivot? Is we have to now start to recognize and appreciate and elevate our indigenous way of learning. They both things can coexist. We can braid them. We don't have to live in one world or the other. We can braid, right? And I will end with this. The swing bridge. Those people travel to San Francisco to see all those bridges.
My man, is that a monkey bridge?
No, I would not call it monkey because people call it monkey because black people are building it. But the swing bridge that goes back and forth.
Yeah,
that's engineering. That's STEM. That's mathematics. Our people will tell you when was the last time that water crested, and will build that bridge so that the water would never flow, would never increase to get to it. And they know certain kind of ropes to use that mix together. So those ropes have saps. And those saps will make sure that they work together and not against one another so that it doesn't corrode. And that bridge is is exposed to the elements, to the wind, to the cold, to the heat.
For 20, 25 years.
And it's there, and they know when to go and refurbish it. Right? That is science, that is mathematics, that is engineering all in one. Show me one teacher that's ever gone on a road trip, on a field trip in Liberia and taken Liberian kids to go and see that and marvel at it and talk about it. Now, when you tell me where do we shift, that's where we start to shift.
So from what I've gathered from you is we have to go back and show a high level of appreciation for our origins.
Incorporate.
Yeah, because if you look at it, gentlemen, is that if your story does not connect to its origin, it's meaningless and useless. It's unstable.
I agree.
If it doesn't connect to it, if you don't have a starting point when you order your Uber, and the Uber doesn't know where to find you, where to meet you, the Uber only know where you're going, but it doesn't know where to pick you up from. You're lost. So if your story does not connect to its origin, nobody can uplift you because first of all, there's no origin. You can only have a destination without an origin. It is the origin that helps you appreciate the destination because you know where you're starting from to even know where you're supposed to go. And another thing I would say in more contemporary terms, maybe people who may not be as deep, or may not be as digging deeper into the histories and what we're talking about. Let me talk about what you can do contemporary. We need to stop being polite about the lies and deception as in Liberia. We need to start pretending like we're scared to talk for the opposite of politics. So we stay. Let me give you an example. The Liberian government budget. How can we all sit every year, they give us $700 billion, we clap, they say they will build hospital, they will build school, they will build roads, they will build, and we all clap. How is that not the greatest lie and deception on earth? The cost of one properly built hospital is $700 million. A small university in Canada that I teach at, 36,000 students, is $722 million for 36,000 students. So where all of us can be on radio everywhere debating that the government will do well because the government pronounced it that the budget is $700 million, even if nobody stole a penny, even if everybody was volunteering, let's assume all government workers were volunteering, they were not taking salary, you still will not scratch an inch with the $700 million because that's voodoo economics. It does not make any sense.
Well,
my voodoo makes sense. But before
I can agree and disagree with you.
No, that's fair. No many you can disagree. Yeah, that's fair.
And yeah, yes, where I agree what you're saying. Is to a certain extent correct, and it can only be correct in a perfect world, right, where everything is aligned. But I think when the government creates a budget, I think that's why they call it an annual budget. I think it's for that particular year. Now, building a hospital might take what 3, 4, 5, 6 years.
No, it should take 2-3 months.
Well, in a place like Liberia, I don't think that's possible. So we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic. So if a government says in this budget we have all of the $700 million, maybe we have $5-10 million for the construction of a hospital, then maybe over the next incremental years you can put money in the budget to continually.
I wish the way you describe it is the way they were presenting the new money, but that's not what they're saying. They're saying within the 12 months. Let me give you this.
Well, then it's a communication thing. So that the folks who
is it a deception thing?
Deception.
I agree. That's why I say I can agree with you, and I have this. So it's all a communication thing. I think the government, when they create these budgets, they need to come forth and explain clearly to their citizens how these budgets will be exhausted.
All right, let me
but let's not.
No, that's an important point that you. It's an important point that you made. Yeah,
I love the point that Peter made. I love the point that Cece made. All right, we're at an hour and 30 minutes. We have like 30 more minutes to go on the show. So here's what I want to do. I want to take a step back, and I want us to look back. Because since we're talking education, I want us to take a look back at our own journey, our personal education journey. So I know all of us here went to school in Liberia from kindergarten up till, maybe the time we left. Maybe a few of us did high school somewhere else for a few years. But I want you to take a step back and look at your own personal journey. Pinpoint this one teacher, male, female. How did that teacher impact you? And how has it impacted your life today? Let's take a few minutes to talk, maybe the next 15-20 minutes to talk about that. If you know the teacher name, fine. If you don't know, you can make up a name. But how, the reason I want to do that is I want to really go back and look at, because we're talking about the roots, of Liberia's pre-conflict educational system, and I want to highlight, make it my duty to highlight that indeed there were some bright spots in our system, and looking at the works and the impact that that particular teacher or those particular teachers had on your own life. How can we recreate? How can we inspire the next group of teachers? Because we'll need a lot of teachers to inspire, not only to teach, but to inspire. I think we missed that piece in our system. Part of teaching is not coming every day, and Cece, you probably might know a little bit more than that than all of us here, just because you're a classroom teacher. But one of the greatest aspect of educating any nation is inspiring. So I wanted to use this time, gentlemen, for us to just talk about the teachers who inspire us. Anybody can go first.
Oh, I thought Leo wanted to go first. Leo, you want to go? I'll go.
No, you go. Go. I was just talking.
So I went from Ole Crawford to Cathedral, and I did my first 7 years in Cathedral, first grade to 7th grade. So there was a slew of teachers that were foundationally relevant to me and my successes. I have Mr. Chady, Mr. Jipley, and Ms. Sambula, Dr. Sambula right now. And what they prided themselves and held us accountable to were the fundamental standards of excellence, right? Being punctual, being involved, not sleeping, and then making sure that you perform academically. And there was some severe consequences when you deviated off track, whatever the track was, those prescribed limits. And every time you did that, there was consequences of butt whipping, fundamental butt whipping. So you carry that with you, and you don't lose that as you grow, because it's a structure, it's a disciplinary system that's embedded in you. When you're a kid, you probably don't see it, you don't foresee it. Again, he said 2020, right? Hindsight, looking back now, you see the value. It makes sense. At that time, it didn't make sense. In fact, you probably hated them at that time. You didn't want to see them. But yes, what's important, and I will never forget this. When I got to the 7th grade, and my family, my mom left for Liberia, so I actually sat out of school for a while, for a year, between 7th, 8th grade. And then there was a man, Mr. Mende, the late Mr. Mende, taught at Wells Heston High School. So he was renting from us, and Mr. Mende told my dad, instead of the kids sitting at home, I'll pay your rent at the school. And that put me back in West Heston High School. But because of that, he kept me focused as well and helped me, make me remember that, hey, this is not just a casual affair. This is an opportunity to continue education, and I'll forever remember him for that. But yeah, that what sticks out to me.
Powerful story, my brother.
Yeah.
Powerful story. Thanks for sharing.
I can go. I think for me though, I don't remember my formative years any teacher that took really keen interest in me. I came from Lofa County, from Zolo. I came to Monrovia, and my dad. So for me, what keeps me going is my dad and my mom's story. I wasn't a teacher, and it was the reason I got into education. Actually, my stepdad was a teacher. He graduated from ZRTTI, one of those C certificates. We're teaching at Balatua High School. Incidentally, the school that was established by Woodard Arator, but I only had girls dormitory for one reason, and we all know that. But people that like to, we'll talk about that.
They probably let you them.
Yeah. And the right to the border is right to the border too. But right to the border.
He was particular about Pele Julian.
Yeah, Pele Julian is like.
I know why.
But anyway, so to go back, is my dad is a son of a warrior, a chief in Zolo, 11 wives, credited with 36 kids. Now we're gonna have to do some DNA. We'll bring Maury to do that shit around who are his children, but that's a whole different thing for a different show. But my grandfather saw, the way he saw Westerners was that they were people who were encroaching on traditional values. Mind you, he had joined the Liberian Frontier Force. Before then, he had fought Guinea and the French from encroaching on Liberian territory. So he had seen white encroachment, and he had gone to the Congo as a peacekeeper, and you know, and he has seen all of that. So he had some resistance towards what Europeans were offering. And so my dad did not have a prospect of going to school. My mom, her dad was a judge. He had managed to be one of those Loma people to become a little bit elitist. Their relationship was forbidden from both sides, right? My dad is from the countryside and she's from the other side, and whatever. Fast forward, my mom started school very late. My dad started school very late. My mom in 5th grade got pregnant. So she was 15, my dad was 17, and she was in 5th grade, he was in the 6th grade. So these two people had nothing to offer to me. So for the first 2 years when I was born, I didn't see my dad. He was in Monrovia. He had traveled to Monrovia to sell newspaper because that was the big thing back then. He said newspaper in Raleigh Town there. You can go by once in a while. You're a big boy. But he decided newspaper said it was not going to be his only thing. He was going to try to go to school and you're going to do other things. And so my mom got given an ultimatum by her dad. You're trying to get a baby by this country boy. You either abort the pregnancy or I disown you. So she chose to keep me. And that was the end of her education. Forever. She never went back to school. My dad, fast forward, went to LAMCO, worked for LAMCO, went through night school, graduated at LU with an electrical engineering degree, right? So two sides. And my mom would always tell me, say, Gidoba, I don't want this to be your burden, but I want you to understand that a lot of people have sacrificed a lot of things for you. And so because of that, I've always had a chip on my shoulders. When I went to cathedral, my name was Gidoba Sisegoya. I mean, it was the beginning, I think a title or a name. I would always tell everybody, I said, wait till after the first period test, we'll learn our name by 4 because I got to help you with my homework, right? So you will learn that Gidoba name for me to help you with my homework. But that for me, that is what has always carried me. That is what has always pushed me. Everything I do, I've always tried to be excellent at it because I felt like had my mom given me up, she would have done better than me. And so she sacrificed her own future. Now she's deceased, but she sacrificed her own future, and my dad took it on himself. You know, my dad would take LPA. He would credit 3 months salary to pay my 1 semester tuition in cathedral. You know, and that's how we made it. And people thought I came from a rich background. No, I didn't. Right? But my dad told me that he would be damned if I didn't get what he got. So he was going to give me what he never had. Right? And so I really intentionally, from the beginning, I wanted to be an engineer because my dad was an engineer. That was the biggest thing. I wanted to be an engineer. So education for me in Liberia was just, I would do the one right now. I guess something good to do. When I came to the U.S., I double major. I've loved math ever since I was little.
So Cici, let me hold you there. Very interesting story. The question again, maybe somewhere along the way, you know.
I come into it.
Oh, you coming there?
I come into it.
Carry on, my brother.
So the way I entered the classroom is a double major at the university. I did math and electrical engineering. I work as an engineer for a defense contractor. I didn't like it, and I always knew that education was my calling. And so I left that when my sister had a bad interaction with the American school system. When we came from Liberia, she was in the 3rd grade. She was 13 years old, but when we got here, she got jumped because she had to be placed in the class according to her age, and there was no way to support her and help her. I saw that in the Liberian community here in Brooklyn Park and Brooklyn Center, and that is how I entered into the classroom. But I actually entered in the classroom because I love mathematics and also because of the fact that I have seen stuff happen to kiddos that I didn't like. It happened to my own little sister. But to point out to an actual teacher who actually took a special liking in me back in the day in Liberia, I don't see it. I mean, I know some teachers that were really smart by our own calculation of smart. I knew a teacher who would come without it. We'll be reading things for apart and read the entire periodic table on the board. We said the man smart. Now knowing it was just word memory, right? So we admire people like that, and I wish to admire, but I don't really remember a teacher that really took a special liking to me and, you know, kind of mentor me into saying, okay, I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay. All right. All right, Leo, let's go on to you, Leo. You're muted.
Yeah, you talk too much about the Buddha. Now the Buddha forces have hacked your system.
It's still muted.
Let me see if I can unmute him. I don't know if I can do that.
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was there about to read your lips. Now.
Yeah, the thing was frozen. I don't know why it was being frozen. No, there are two. Again, for me, foundation would be my mother first, from the home side. But let's talk about it in the walls of the institution itself.
Yeah.
There were two. One was, still remember, was grade 3. There is this woman called Miss Wida Corver. I think she's still alive, actually. I was in a very small community school. For some reason, this woman has some kind of belief in me. I don't know from where. Because up to that point, I was very terrible. I was one of those kids who, in your quiz book, I would tear the sheet all the quizzes because the performance inside was not easy before you take it home. But I forgot that when you tear one sheet, the other sheet on the other side, the woman come from where and then figure out how many sheets are missing because on the other side, all the other, you know, when the copy book sheet used to be bent in between. Right? So I was bad. I was just bad, whatever it was. And one day, this woman was teaching me, Miss Whitaker, I just got angry as to why I was intentionally being, in her opinion, how she deduced that, I don't know. And something I made, I think I just performed poorly one day, and she flogged the devil out of me. I still remember. She beat me that day. And she beat me to the point where I got angry. And, you know, even though you accept the teachers, you know, so I don't know if I agree with her methods or whatever, but it produced an outcome.
Punishment.
Yeah, but it produced an outcome. So I balance it when I say it. I tell people, say, I would not deny that it produced. And I got angry, so I left. It was the first time in my life I went home to tell my mother somebody beat me. I was not even afraid that I was performing poorly. I was just angry. And my mom said she would come to the school. Because my mom was so busy, single mother at the time, she now wanted to put, I'll come to the school all the time. My mom said she'll come to the school. So I had a little bit of pride, you know, that my mother would come into the school, it give you something. And my mom showed up to the school, and when she walked in to the principal office, they asked for the teacher, they sent for the teacher. And my mom saw the teacher. Apparently, this woman took care of me as a baby because they were both on a mission together in Jowa, in Bon County, in the nursing school. They were, when my mom had me, she was still there in the nursing school. So her friends, they were all in the dormitory, they all used to like babysit me when she has to go to class and come back. And the two people started hugging each other in my presence. How it's been a long time that they had not seen my mom, were not even aware that she was my teacher. And in my presence, and the principal gave an unlimited license for flogging me whenever she felt like. Whenever she felt like things were not going right, she could flog me anyhow, any way, wherever she wished, without any hesitation. Long story short, I was not one of those contenders to have given, you know, those days introducing the guest speaker was a big thing in grade 3. If you were the one at the end of the school year for graduation, you were introducing the guest speaker. You were like the biggest person in the student body. And for some reason, the guy who they are giving this thing to the young guy to begin, you know, the smartest in the class, something happened. And 2 days to the graduation ceremony, they realized that he was not going to be available. And they had to find someone. And like Cece said, memorization is a big thing in our system. So those days, they needed somebody who could memorize the thing. Whatever the woman believed, she came and pointed at me. Like, cold bomb ran down my skin. And I'm like, this woman losing her mind or what? I'm not one of your top students in your class. She pointed at me, and I couldn't say no because she had a limited license to flog me. So I couldn't say no. Any other teacher would have said no. I would have just walked away. So I took it as whatever. If I flung, I flung. Whatever she's looking for, she'll get it. First, I thought she was just joking. She was giving me a test and had a backup to see what I would do. And I went home somehow. Something switched on. I don't know what it was. I memorized this thing, and she had the confidence to still assure the principal that I should do it that day off. She still had that confidence. And I went up there and I aced it. And from that day, I never... In fact, before the year ended, they jumped me to the next class because one day she was teaching grade 4, we're in grade 3, and there was a math problem that they could not solve in grade 4. She said, I will bring Leo, saying I can solve it from grade 3. She went to the class, brought me, and I was able to solve the problem. She said, from today's day, I've told the principal, you're in grade 4, you're not going back to grade 3. That was one of them. The second person was a Ghanaian fellow, Mr. Theophilus Kwabla Salah. I think he's also still alive in Sinkinzido. This was the man, he was teaching us English literature. But his early decolonized mentality shocked me when I look back on it. That's what the man who told me, said, I don't understand you Liberians. You are crazy. You throw the Bible down, you say, God forgive me. The Bible is just a complicated literature book, nothing more than that. This was the first man who told me some things in the Bible may not even be true. I'm talking about, this was grade 7 in Sinkinzido. And you should see all of us cringing, right? Because what they have taught us from Sunday school, Bible school, all of those. And we were actually angry and thought, how disrespectful will you be to the Bible? You know, we thought he was a tough you want to put, I'll whip you too. So we never used to talk much. But this was a man who went so deep that told me that the Bible, nothing against it, great morals and everything in it, but don't get it twisted. It's a colonized, arranged literature book to deliver a certain message. Now, I'm not saying it was not inspired by God. He didn't say it. He said even Martin Luther's speeches were inspired by God. So this whole thing you Liberians take and say because it was inspired by God, and you, even if they tell you, say go murder someone, you go and murder them because it was inspired by God. So those two teachers, and many other had, influences on me, like Dr. Pittman said. There were many others, but two that I never forgot, two things that he did I never forgot that I held on to. Mr. Salah with English literature and Miss Rita Carver, who was my class sponsor. She the class sponsor, she taught many subjects. She was a class sponsor, so she taught multiple subjects at the same time. Amazing,
man. What a wonderful story. The reason why I decided to do this is because, man, I think we downplay, and not only in Liberia, but I think all around the globe, I think people downplay the importance of teachers, how important they are. And for us in Liberia, I think you can't stress the importance more. I mean, we need more teachers, we need more mentors. We need people who can inspire the next generation. But I'll just go down the list for me. For me, first and foremost, is my mom. I still remember, so I was talking to my mom about 2 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, and we were talking about, I asked her, I said, Mom, you remember my first week for school? And she was like, yeah, I remember you didn't even want to go. You cry. Hold on 1 minute, gentlemen. I gotta open the garage here for somebody. I apologize. She said you didn't even want to go to school. You cry and cry and cry, and I had to drag you. And I mean, just to tell you guys how old I am, at the time, in school, there was feeding, right? So there was feeding in school. So when you go into school in kindergarten, you have to take your bag with your plate and your spoon and all that stuff. So my mom tells me the only reason why you wanted to go to school so much was because they were feeding you out there, and you were so happy because you went. But that's just weird. But by the time I got to elementary school, it was two persons. So first, it was the Reverend Jackson Tukbe. He's a Reverend now. He was a family friend. So he used to come over to our house and tutor us. So he used to teach math and English and everything else. But one of the things that Reverend Tukbe did for me as a young man was to inspire me to play sports. So at the time, he had seen this movie called The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. I don't know if you guys know that movie, but it had Dr. J in it. So Reverend Tukbe would come and describe that movie from start to end. And as a kid, man, it was one of the greatest stories I've ever heard. And his stories inspire me so much. And he used to tell me, look, if you stick to your lesson, if you study, if you do well in school, one day you'll be able to, to be this great basketball player, and you can be a basketball player and be smart. So it was Reverend Tukbe. The next person was my 5th grade teacher, Madam Kumsum. Madam Kumsum was from Ghana. Amazing woman. I don't remember her first name, but she had a way of treating every student like that student was hers. She had a way, she had that motherly, just overall presence that you felt secure, when you're with her. And her teaching style was just so unique, But then by the time I got to high school, on junior high school and high school. It was my 7th grade teacher, like you, Leo. It was my 7th grade teacher. His name is Paul Kingsley Woods. And he was from Ghana. You know, he was my English literature teacher also. And he had a special way of telling unique stories to not only open up your mind and have you being present. You know, it takes a special teacher to grasp your attention for the entire duration of the class. You know, usually you sit there and you pay attention for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but Mr. Woods had a way of just grabbing your attention and keeping it for the full duration of the class. So those were the teachers who really inspired me, all right, and who really taught me to not only learn, but to also dream, all right? And with that, Cece, I'll turn it over to you. Just go ahead. We have 10 minutes. We can start with our closing statement. And guys, thank you. It's been a wonderful show. It's been a wonderful episode. I look forward to having you guys back next week. So Cece, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can go on to Pittman and then Leo. I'll be back.
All right. Well, it has been it's always exciting when I hang with it. Pelebo and this but Dr. Pittman, meeting you again is expanded my resources and again it's allowed me to learn new things, and hopefully my brain is inelastic. It doesn't return to its original base after interacting. But I think to folks that are watching the show, one of the things we can do, we keep complaining that Liberia is going nowhere. It is platforms like these, and the discussions like these that you have to share, that you have to elevate, so that other folks can see. Because we keep saying, oh, there is a lack of these, and here Dr. Pittman and Newman took their time to plan this out. Leo and I crashing their party, but they have a few other guests that show up a lot of the time. This is where we start from. We keep saying, how do we change Liberia? It is conversations like these that we start to share, that we start to elevate. We're not even asking you to give stars, just share it. Share the knowledge so that other people can know. It has been a wonderful pleasure being on. I refuse to give up on Liberia. I live and breathe Liberia and the educational system. Even amongst my white peers, when I talk to them about my village schools. I talk about all of the mathematics in my village. I talk about fractals, which are higher level, graduate level mathematics. I talk about it from my village point of view. I'm so excited to be a Liberian, and I am super excited to be a Lofian, and it's wonderful being on, always talking about my country and talking about how we can help. Nomani and Dr. Pittman, thank you for the platform, and my brother Leo, you know how much I love you, my brother. Liberia first always, man.
Thank you.
So social media has been a gift to the world when we use it right. A few years ago, maybe a couple of years ago, I put on social media, Facebook, and I see this guy just running his mouth. The dark-skinned guy, they're talking. The man talking, and then he answering the people in the chat at the same time. I'm missing a beat. Chat going and quality of this. So I chimed a couple of times, and I'm like, man, this young man is brilliant, right? So fast forward, I met Leo last year in Houston. We met in person for the first time, hung out for a little bit. And you guys know the amount of work he's doing in Liberia, But
you know what? By the time we get to episode 3, I think we'll do that entire episode is going to be about Leo.
So Leo, thank you for the infrastructure. Thank you for being a change agent, transformational leader. We gotta get props to where it's due, So thank you so much for sharing this platform. 2 weeks ago, we were on I think it was last week or so, we're on this platform talking, and this CC guy just writing. But what he's writing making sense. You can tell, right? They say when you open your mouth, you tell the world who you are. I'm like, who is this guy? So
the man writing from the border.
Yeah, right. So I go on Facebook, the man like a clown on Facebook, that's making fun. Then you can't look at okay, so I said, no, I gotta talk to this guy. I connected right away, and I was impressed, man. Like, look, we got some real brothers doing the thing, right? But I say all of that to say that for us to advance the forward march, we need to leverage these guys more than we have been doing. This is a collaborative effort, right? We talk about education. And our nation, to go from recovery, right, to prosperity requires education. But I mean, holistic education, not just limited education. The basket weaving, the kino man, everybody has a place in this holistic education. And until we start to embrace that, then we're still behind. Because, and I know normally always say, well, consider that we're in Liberia. If we look at the country the way it is, it only gets worse. We got to look at it the way it should be, the way it could be, and then it will become what it should be. So I'm so ecstatic every time I meet these kind of minds, these brains, and we are kind of, sharing ideas. And I just want to encourage our brothers and sisters back home to kind of tap in and use your resources here, because I mean, these guys are the change agents, the future, I mean, I'm a little older, but these are my young brothers. And normally, we are here and we can talk basketball or anything else, but it's a pleasure. And thank you so much for this event, and this week's episode is great. Looking forward to the next one.
Amazing. I think this is one of our best.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Leah.
Yeah, no, thank you. And thanks to everyone. CZ as well, good to see you. And Dr. Pittman Canada, good to see you as well. And Numeni, thank you actually for reaching out. I mean, he actually reached out and we chatted and things went from there. So thank you. But it's funny because you're right, because sometimes we know of each other. Like in passing, we see each other on what is on social media, wherever doing things. And then you quickly realize that the network gets smaller once you talk to people, that this person knows the other person that you're so close to, but for some reason you didn't. But here's what I would say. And for me, I say a bad soul requires a bad medicine. I'm not the small believing this. So I don't do small. That's why I got the way it is today. I'm sorry. And that's why I was trying to disagree with Numeni when I said nobody should build a hospital over 3 years. It should be 3 to 6 months. You need no reason over 3 years, because you have to flood the zone. Those of you in sports, you know that. Where Liberia is, the biggest challenge I had building that learning center, to be honest, was to make Liberians believe that it was possible. So the only thing you can do, you have to flood the zone that when it appears, it will overwhelm anybody who would have even doubted. It can, because that's where we are. And so for me, I tell people, I use UL as an example. I keep asking people, why to this date, any president prerequisite for taking over UL is not built as the most advanced university campus on the African continent right now? Why is that not in the job interview? Why is Liberia not putting forth a vision, what is over 5 years, to build Africa's first energy net zero university campus, given the status that UL has? Why are we still talking about renovating bathrooms? Why are we still talking about roofing one side of the building? The building is outdated. It's not useful. You got to flood the zone. Money goes where innovation is. It's not the other way around. You don't look for money to do innovation. Innovate, and the money will follow. So for me, I want to thank everybody, and I will hope the lever we're talking about switching has to be the boldness of it. I'd rather die trying to do what was required than trying to do small to get there. So for me, to all of our brothers and sisters listening, I would say to you now, we need to graduate from grassroots to system level. There's a reason why the grass is under your feet. You can step on it. There's a reason why you can step on the tree that is over you, but it provides you shades. So let's grow from small. We need to start talking system level. They're not wartime here again. Let's create a new normal day, because the old one were bad. So when we're doing something, let's ask the question for 50 years down the road. It can be because the children are hungry in West Point, so let's provide rest. No, you're not answering the question. Let's ask, how will we manage to turn West Point into a real estate marvel for underprivileged families that live there? Those are the type of questions we should be asking. The executive mansion, the Capitol building, is sitting on top of the hill, smelling the stench of poverty that rises from Buse Quarter, Niku Town, West Point, and they smell it and enjoy it every day and go back home and sleep in peace. I'm sorry, I cannot accept that in good conscience, regardless of who the governors of the day are. If you can build the wealth of the country on top of the stench of poverty and get so used to it that you actually enjoy it, I have a problem with that. So I would say all of us here, we need to start being bold and stop being polite. Because I know our politeness in our culture is to try to not offend and not step on toes. So we're trying to be careful. No, we should be offending. The situation in Liberia, we should wake up every day and offend somebody. Somebody should get angry and be forced to pay attention. So thank you, everyone.
Awesome.
Leo Lekpere Nobru Johnson. My brother, you're so inspiring. Thank you. Thank you very much. Cece, thanks for being here. As always, Dr. Pittman, thank you for being here. Look, for me, Liberia is special to me. And, when you look around, too many times, the conversation that drives the day, it's not about what is our best. It's always about how can we manage. This is not, the podcast is not meant to create political rivalries. We're not going to talk about parties. We're not going to talk about individuals here. We're going to talk about Liberia. What is going to drive Liberia forward? What is going to make Liberia a better place? I love the ideas that Dr. Pittman brings daily. Pittman is the only guy who wakes up at 7 o'clock in the morning and is going at 100 miles per hour. His mind is speeding up. His energy is high. If you're watching on his daily or social media routine, this guy is going fire. CC, he's a different story already. CC is a trailblazer. He's blazing. In fact, CC is up at 5. The first ping I get on my phone at 5:30 in the morning when I'm up comes from CC. CC Goya is live. Leo, my brother, I met Leo a few weeks ago. In fact, I reached out, like he said, and I'm just inspired, by your Empowerment Square initiatives and everything else that you're doing. We'll get to talk about it. But here on All the Reps and Beyond, we're here to accentuate the positives. We want to bring our best image, the best image of ourselves. We want to create networks of people who can speak about these things, pool the resources that we all bring to the table, whether it's financial, whether it's intelligence, whatever it is. We want to come together, and we want to reshape the conversation, in our country. And that conversation can start by looking at our past, looking at where we are, and then looking at the future. And let's not stop. Like I always say here, let's talk, but not only stop there. Let's also do. Let's do what it takes. And building a network is where it starts. It starts with conversations like this. It starts with individual linking up together, people with different mindset, different ideas, but grounded in ethics and grounded in principles. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you for being with us. This is the first part in our 3-part series looking at the education and culture journey of our country, Liberia, pre and post conflict. We're very appreciative. We appreciate you being here with us for the past 2 hours, listening to us, listening to our stories. And we look forward to seeing you next week. All right, when we're going to talk about our educational system during our conflict. So we're looking at how we educated our people from 1980, because that was the height of our civil crisis. That was when our civil crisis started, and we'll take you through that journey through the 90s and the early 2000s, because I think that's when we kind of the civil crisis came to a halt and we transitioned into the full democratic process. So again, this is a 3-part series, and we'll glad that you were here with us for part 1. We look forward to seeing you next week for part 2. And with that, I want to say thank you for being on episode 3 of All the Reps and Beyond. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Open the border now. Border
I'm heading
open.
back, right? My chopper waiting for me. I'm on my way to the border. See you all.
Y'all be good, man. Leo, you back in Canada?
Yes, I got back not too long ago.
Awesome. Take care, brother. Y'all be good. See you, Normally.
Yes, sir. You guys have a wonderful time.